Welcome back. This is day one of your endocrine system. So today's aim is how does our body communicate internally? So we just finished up talking about the nervous system and how that system is involved with really fast and rapid communication. And our endocrine system is involved with communication as well. But this time, the communication is going to be a little bit more slow, a little bit more gradual. And we're talking about something called hormones. So keeping that in mind, I want you guys to go ahead and pause this video, answer questions 1 and 2, and press play when you are ready to review them. Now, I might have lied. I'm not going to tell you the answer to these two questions yet. In fact, you might be looking at these being like, what the heck, Miss Collins? We have not talked about this yet. And you're right. But by the end of today's lesson, you will be able to answer these two questions. So we'll go over it at the end of today's lesson. So let's get started. The very first thing we're going to do today is read an introductory passage on what exactly is the endocrine system. And as always, as I read through this passage, I want you guys to make important annotations on your paper. So highlight any important words or phrases that will help you answer questions 1 and 2. All right. The human endocrine system is made up of endocrine glands, which secrete hormones directly into the blood. The hormones are transported by the circulatory system to the organs and tissues. This allows for the regulation of the overall metabolism, homeostasis, growth, and reproduction. But what exactly are hormones? Well, these are special chemical substances that are released by the endocrine system. And these hormones affect other endocrine glands or body systems. Now, something we need to know is that only certain hormones are able to communicate with certain cells. Endocrine glands. Some of the glands of the endocrine system are the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, the thyroid, parathyroid, adrenal glands, islets of Langerhans, and gonads, known as the ovaries and testes. And we're going to be learning more about some of these structures today. But before we do that, you guys have got two questions. Number one, what is the role of the endocrine system? And two, why do only certain hormones communicate with certain cells and not all of the cells in the body? So pause this video, answer those two questions based on what we read in the passage, and press play when you are ready to review them. So number one, what is the role of the endocrine system? Well, you should have gotten that the role is to secrete hormones into the bloodstream that allow for the regulation of the body's overall metabolism, homeostasis, growth, and reproduction. So those hormones, those tiny chemical substances, are going to cause changes throughout your body and regulate everything that's going on inside, including metabolism, homeostasis, growth, and reproduction. But number two, why do only certain hormones communicate with certain cells and not every cell in your body? Well, if you think way back to Unit 2, we talked about something called enzymes. And those enzymes are specific for receptors based on shape. Remember, we talked about the lock and key theory. And these hormones actually work the same way. So hormones are going to communicate with cells based on the hormone and receptor shape. They're only going to communicate with cells with this specific shape receptor, the same way that enzymes work. So if this is our cell right here, there are going to be tiny little receptors on the surface. Okay, and hormones know which receptor to go to based on their shape. Okay, so it will look something like this. All right. Now, today's lesson is just an introduction of what we need to know about the endocrine system. So most of today's lesson, what you're about to see, is just an introduction to a bunch of the different structures we're going to be working with over the next few days. So I'm actually going to go through that on this page so I can write on my screen. All right. The first structure we need to know with the endocrine system is something known as the pituitary gland. Now, this pituitary gland is this tiny little structure found inside of your brain. I'm gonna circle it in red right here. It's this tiny little bean-shaped structure inside of your brain, all right? And the job of that pituitary gland is, we call it the master gland because it's in charge of a lot of different hormones in your body. It actually controls and regulates all of the other glands inside of your body. So we call this the master gland because it controls all other glands in the body and it regulates growth. Right? So the pituitary gland, it's small, but it's mighty. It controls every other gland. Next structure we need to know is something called the adrenal glands. Now, we find the adrenal glands on top of the kidneys. So I'm going to zoom in right here and circle these structures on top of your kidneys. right? These are your adrenal glands. And what they do is they produce and they release the hormone called adrenaline. You might have also heard this called epinephrine. And this hormone comes in handy during the fight or flight response. So imagine this, you're sitting in your house right now and a bear comes crashing through the door. What are you going to do? Okay, there's two responses you would probably have. You would either run away or you would get up and get ready to fight that bear. And that is the result of adrenaline. That is the result of the fight or flight response. Anytime your body senses danger, it's going to go essentially into like a survival mode and get ready to either run away or fight the threat. Okay, and that is the result of the hormone known as adrenaline or epinephrine. You might also see that the beginning of this word epinephrine starts with the letter EPI that kind of looks like something you may be familiar with known as an EpiPen. That EpiPen is what's given to people when they are having an allergic reaction, and it's filled with epinephrine. So again, that adrenaline is going to go into their body and basically go into survival mode. That fight or flight response kicks in and it helps them stay alive until they can get help for that allergic reaction. All right, so this is survival mode when threats are present. All right, the third structure we need to know is known as the pancreas. So the pancreas is this funny looking structure right here. I'm highlighting it in blue. And the pancreas is pretty important because it produces two very important hormones that you need to function. And those two hormones are called insulin and glucagon. Those two hormones are going to regulate blood sugar levels. Okay, the first hormone, insulin, works to lower blood sugar levels, and the second hormone, glucagon, is going to raise blood sugar levels. So these two hormones are going to work in something we call a feedback loop or a feedback mechanism to keep your blood sugar stable. Okay, and we'll be talking more about that feedback loop as well as what happens when these hormones don't work properly over the next few days. But you may be recognizing that those words look pretty familiar to what we saw at the Do Now. Okay, so go ahead and use that information to answer questions 1 and 2 if you haven't already. The next two structures we need to go over are called the ovaries and the testes, and these are both of your sexual organs. If you have ovaries, let me see where, I'm going to do that in a nice purple color. Your ovaries are present right here. And those ovaries are found in females. Those are glands that produce the hormones estrogen and progesterone. Both of those hormones are responsible for basically any sort of secondary sexual characteristic in female bodies. So maintaining the menstrual cycle, development of of the female body, such as enlargement of breasts, widening of hips, and pubic hair. All of these things are going to occur at the onset of puberty, which you guys are probably very familiar with. So ovaries, again, are going to secrete the hormones estrogen and progesterone to undergo the sexual development of the female body. Okay, but if you don't have ovaries, you likely have testes, which are going to be found, that structure is going to be here, but I'll highlight them in orange. Those testes are found in males, and this is going to produce something called testosterone. And similar to what we saw in the females, this is going to be responsible for sexual development of the male body. And some things we will see here are the deepening of the voice, muscle development, and pubic hair. But again, these things will occur during the onset of puberty. All right, now let's go over the do now before I end this video. So question number 1, which hormone aids directly in reducing the sugar level of the blood? Well, hopefully you recognize that that is going to be insulin. Insulin, as we saw, is produced by the pancreas and works to lower blood sugar levels. So the answer there was 3. All right, and number 2, an example of the maintenance of homeostasis in humans is the action of glucagon and insulin in regulating the what? Well, we saw that insulin and glucagon, again, have to do with the pancreas, and those are both involved with regulating the concentration of blood sugar. So the answer there was 2. All right. Using that information, I want you guys to go ahead and click on your exit ticket. That's all I've got for you today. Again, we will be diving into more detail about each of these structures over the next few days, but for right now, that's all you need. You've got 2 questions. Go ahead and press submit. Other than that, have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys tomorrow.